Another super spuddy today. We've got Lynn. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's a long one today, but I'm sure you'll see that it's worth it because Lynn is a star. She's been through a lot, and she's had a tough road, but she's doing really, really well now. And I'm sure you'll find her story very inspiring, and I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to her talk. So. Uh, uh, Keep watching and enjoy. And if you want to find out more about what I do, and then please go to spudfit.com, click the links below, like, subscribe, share this video, enjoy. All right, welcome back to another Super Spuddies episode. We're here to talk with Lynn Howie. Lynn's got a pretty cool story, a pretty amazing story, and I'm sure you guys will learn a lot. So yeah, I won't introduce that. I'll allow Lynn to do that. So Lynn, how are you today?
Hi, Andrew. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, and thank you for joining me, and thank you for taking the time to do this. I very much appreciate it. It's the kind of people that I typically have doing the SpudFit Challenge are generally pretty low self-esteem people, and it's hard to get people to agree to come on camera because people are mostly low self-esteem, unhappy with their appearance and unhappy with themselves, and that's great that they're taking the time and effort to work on all that and work on improving themselves and feeling better about themselves, but most people are not quite ready to get on camera and talk about it. So I always appreciate it when someone agrees to do it, so thank you very much for that.
Oh, look, I'm honoured that you asked me, actually, and yeah, I can totally relate to that. But I guess I'm at a different place in my journey now. I'm coming through that, and I'm learning and I'm growing. So it's been great that you've given me the opportunity to say where I've been and where I'm going and how I got there.
Well, that's great. So, well, yeah, let's get into that straight away then. So, how about you tell us just a little bit about your background? What led you to SpudFit?
Wow. Okay.
That's a huge question.
That's a massive question.
Yeah.
Let's cram 55 years into like.
Yeah.
Look, I've had a very dysfunctional relationship with food for my entire life. It started probably when I was 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old, and I first become aware of food scarcity. Not that I was raised in a working class family, but you wouldn't remember because you're too young. But back in the early 1970s, late 60s, there was the Biafran War, and we were confronted with images of starving children in Africa, and we use that cliche so easily now. Eat what's on your plate because there's starving children in Africa, but the teachers at school decided to tell us all about it. And it affected me enormously. And I suddenly realized that what would happen, what if this happened in Australia? And as a 5-year-old, that was
heavy.
incredibly logical.
Yeah.
But as an adult, it wasn't. So I started hoarding food. Didn't eat it, I just hid it. So that progressed then to binging. And I would eat anything that I had because, what if the food ran out? So by the time I was, like 12, I was really overweight. It was the first indication, I guess, the first point in my life where I realised I was overweight, was when some older teenage kids looked at me and said, "Oh God, look at her legs."
No.
So yeah, progressed into anorexia, bulimia, severe depression. Roll on into my 20s. I had my first breakdown at, how old was I? 25. You often say, that drug addicts, can give up drugs and alcoholics can give up alcohol. And for me, I decided at that point that I needed to give up food. So I decided that I wasn't going to eat for 2 weeks. Wasn't very bright. Ended up in a psych unit. after an overdose, and survived, obviously. They let me go for a whole 2 weeks without eating, and I hit 14 days and I started to eat again. But for me, it was a real psychological thing. I had to make that stand.
Yeah, it's amazing what these sort of food addiction, or food disordered food eating disorders,
Yep.
like, they can make you go to crazy lengths, which at the time you're doing it doesn't seem crazy,
No,
Yeah.
it was perfectly logical.
Yeah.
And I can still remember just how realistic it seemed. I just needed to give up food. It was, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And resulted in hospital and an overdose. And but it's so wrapped up. You were talking before about self-esteem and self-worth and value, and I felt I had no control over my life, but I needed to control what I put in my mouth for once in my life, and that was the way I did it. Roll on. I battled weight. I've had 7 children. Severe postnatal depression after each of them.
I've got 2 children, and that is just the hardest thing that I've ever done, is having kids. And I've only got 2. I can't imagine having 7 of them. You're like a hero.
Well, I was told I couldn't have children, so we thought we'd take whatever come along. And they just kept coming.
Yeah, a little bit like with food. You're worried about running out of food, so you took all the food, and then same with the kids. Sorry, I shouldn't have talked about that, but couldn't help it.
Yeah. So it worked out. It wasn't a fluke, it was. Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of fun and games and good memories to go with all those kids as well.
Oh, look, it was amazing. It is amazing. I have 7 children. I have 7 grandchildren now as well.
Oh, wow.
Someone once said to me, my gosh, it must be so difficult having so many kids. But you know what? It was easy when the kids were little. It's bloody hard now they're grown up.
Yeah.
They have adult problems, and I can't fix adult problems.
I've heard that. Small kids have small problems, and big kids have big problems. Yeah.
That's it. You can kiss knees and and give them a hug, but but I mean, it's one hell of a ride. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you're still a superhero in my eyes just for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I tell you what, my one boy, 6 girls. My boy is so much easier than my girls. So get some consolation for that.
All right. So how did you mentioned postnatal depression, which I can relate to.
Yep.
Going through it, once for me. But like 7 times for you. That's Again, I can't imagine it. So tell us about that.
Oh, look, there's so much of my kids in their young years that I don't remember. I think the brain has this amazing ability to cut out what it can't deal with. And when things were just so traumatic, you function and you smile and you do everything that you have to do. But I don't know, you just get through it, and I didn't have family support. My mum died when I was 26. My family was all in Adelaide, and I was in country Western Australia. So, I didn't have that, but I did have some great friends around. But, you put one foot in front of the other. From when I had my breakdown, it was my second child was a year old. So I went on medication at that point. So I spent 30 years on antidepressants.
Wow.
Very, very strong doses, varying degrees and various medications. And up until about 14 months ago, I was actually on 2 antidepressants still to cope with life. So gosh, how do you get through it? Look, you put one foot in front of the other. You count your blessings. You don't sweat the small stuff. You know, it doesn't matter if the house is a mess, as long as you've hugged your kids that day. Yeah, I guess that was how I got through it. And I look back now, and I'm sure my kids would have a different look on it, different take on it. And I'm sure it was, you know, the older ones in particular witnessed what happened, what I went through with the younger ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure it's affected them enormously in their lives as well. But I hope that they've been able to take from it and learn and to grow a little bit from it and have some compassion, and it's helped them deal with things in their life as well.
Yeah.
But don't sweat the small stuff is I guess my biggest takeout. You know, so much doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the same for me as I've only been through depression once for myself, but yeah, somehow the days just keep on ticking past, and you know, you don't have to be a world beater. You don't have to like be right on top of everything all the time. I love that you said as long as you've given your kids a hug and you just you've done what you got to do to get through the day, then tick it off and get the next one done, and you know, bit by bit things get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that there is always hope. You know, it's I've got a great little meme thing that, you know, come through, and it said, you know, when you're having a really bad day, just how does it go? Just remember that so far you've got 100% success rate for getting through that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have survived 100% every single day. I've survived.
Yeah, well, I'm glad for that too. So well done. Yeah. So that sort of leads on to at some point you decided to work on, you know, a bit harder on the way you eat, and you moved towards you know, a whole food based diet. So how did that evolution happen?
I guess the whole weight loss thing, it happened over a period of about 10 or 15 years, really.
Yeah.
I tried a lot of things. I had a lap band put in back in the mid-2000s. Was not successful at all. You very quickly learn how to eat around that. So I didn't lose a lot of weight with that. Fast forward on into 2009, my husband was killed in a car accident. So that spiraled me into massive depression, massive weight gain. By about 5 years ago, I found myself severely depressed, alcohol dependent, extremely obese. I'm only 5'3", so 160 centimeters tall.
Yeah.
And I was sitting around 100 kilos. The heaviest I've ever been is 104 kilos. But at that point, I was sitting around 100 kilos. So, but I was really unwell, and I just thought I was burnt out. I was trying to run the family business.
Yeah.
I was working 12-hour days. I was exhausted. And one of my granddaughters had been born, and I went to the doctors because I had a cough I couldn't get rid of. And he listened to my chest and sent me off for a chest x-ray. And from there, I ended up in hospital and angiograms, and found that my heart was grossly enlarged. I had an echocardiogram, and my ejection fraction, which is the rate of blood flow through my heart, was at 15%. So in the echocardiogram images, my heart is just barely twitching.
Yeah. That's just right on the brink, isn't it? Like.
That's pretty much as low as you can get. You know, without collapse. So within a very quick space of time, they diagnosed that I had a condition called non-compaction cardiomyopathy, which is a congenital heart abnormality. So I had it all my life. It's probably why I was a really, really crap athlete, because I just didn't have stamina. but it's basically it's very rare, but it's when the heart's forming in utero. It starts off as this really soft, cushiony mass, your heart, and it compacts down into layers of muscle, and areas of my heart haven't compacted correctly. And
Okay.
and I think the enormous stress that I was under after my husband died, and the business and my alcohol abuse and things probably, brought it all to a head. So the treatment was I was told was a heart transplant. So that kind of really
Serious as it gets.
That's that really kind of hits.
Yeah.
And so within about a month, I had a pacemaker installed. So I've got this really cool lump in my chest, which it's a defibrillator as well. So if my heart stops, it'll give me a jolt and get me going again.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's never done that. I've been good.
Yeah, good news.
Yeah. So it was kind of like a wake up thing, and my depression was so severe at the time. I really thought, I sincerely didn't want a heart transplant. And my big thing was I don't deserve it. I'm obese. I'm drinking. Oh God, I was going through 2 liters of a cask, which is about 4 or 5 liters of wine every 2 days.
Wow.
So I was
heavy.
really, really heavily drinking. And I thought, I can't in good conscience take a heart. Somebody has to die so that I can live.
Yeah.
And how many other people are on that list who are so much more deserving than me?
Yeah, it's a really heavy realization to come to. That. Yeah.
It is. It's
like, yeah, and the way you describe your life, it's logical and reasonable to think that way too. That it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's just if you weigh it up between you and someone else who's doing all the right things and living the right way, and their heart's not working, and it's what other conclusion could you reach? So that's a really heavy thing to come to terms with, I'm sure.
It was, and I had some major health issues happening. I was severe IBS. I was actually incontinent. I had bladder issues, and with having one major organ failure, you're at risk of other organs failing, a 40% higher risk. So I had bladder problems. I thought, great, here goes my kidneys. So I decided, 26th of November 2017, I decided that this is going to be a really miserable death. In my heart failing, and I knew what that felt like. But if my kidneys were going to go, and then what if my liver went? And, it was going to be a really miserable death.
Yeah.
So I decided to quit, and I went cold turkey. That was that was, in hindsight, incredibly dangerous.
Really? Why?
It took me. Going from that level of alcohol, you put yourself at risk of seizures.
I didn't know
really.
That.
Yeah. You should always, if you are alcohol dependent, you should always do it under medical supervision. Right. And particularly my heart, I could have dropped dead at any point.
Yeah.
I worked through it. I went through the typical cold turkey, the chills, the aches, the incredible aches, uncontrollable shaking, day after day. And it hit home. Wow, because I went from thinking I'd probably just drink a little bit too much to really thinking, holy shit, I've got a major problem here. Yeah. If it's making me sick, then I had a major problem. So, from there I thought, okay, I'm dealing with the alcohol at that point. All right, so I've got to get my health under control. So I decided that, I'd go down the path of having gastric bypass surgery.
Yeah.
So, I needed to do something drastic, and I needed to do it, now, sort of thing. It took me 12 months to get the surgery, but, during that time I worked on my alcohol, and, and by the way, I haven't had a drop of alcohol. since that day. So I'm over 2 years
Congratulations. That's awesome.
sober now. Yeah, that was
Well
a
done.
big thing. So, you know, I decided I went down the path of having bypass surgery. In Australia, it's the omega loop bypass. It's a bit different in America. But basically, they take about 75 to 80% of your stomach and 2 meters of your small intestine. So it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
It's certainly not the easy way out. I had the surgery done in 2018, July 2018. Actually, no, July 2019. We're in 20, aren't we? So 2018. But the weight just didn't really come off. I did lose some weight, but not as fast as they said I was going to.
Yeah.
And it messed with my mind. I already have depression, you know, tendencies, and I was on antidepressants and all this medication for my heart, and it just messed with my mind so badly. And I was obsessed with everything that went into my mouth. And I have this amazing Excel spreadsheet that you know, everything that I ate went into my fitness pal. So, you know, I started logging, well, how come this isn't working for me? So I, you know, logged my calories, my protein, my carbs, my fat, my steps, to try and work out if there was some correlation with what I was doing. You know, and the diet that they put you on is very high protein and high animal protein, because that's where you get a quick hit from it, basically. But one of the things with my eating over the years is that I never get full. I eat until I know that I'm full, but there is something within my genetic makeup, and there is a name for it, and you know, and there is a little bit of research on it, but it's very hard to find. But I never ever feel full. I can have food up to here, but still feel hungry. And surgery didn't fix that. So I sort of, you know, one day I had this realization, you know, God, I can eat, you know, dead animal meat, but I can't eat an apple because it was too high in carbs. You know, and it's like, and I thought, you know, I don't have heart disease. My arteries were clear. But I thought, you know, I'm going to end up with heart disease. So, you know, the big moment come for me was for January 2019. I touched base with a dear friend who I'd known back in the early 80s and lost touch with, and we caught up on Facebook, and she runs Freedom Hill Sanctuary, which is for farm animals in the Adelaide Hills.
Nice.
And vegan, obviously, and she was finishing her post, and, you know, live a more compassionate life. And, you know, I thought, you know, gee, I live a compassionate life. You know, we moved to the country, and I had 3 acres and bottle raised lambs and bottle raised a calf, and, you know, but didn't think twice about going to the supermarket to buy my mincemeat and sausages and RSPCA chicken. And so I thought, you know what, I'll do Veganuary. And so I started 1st of January last year. And of course, you know, you get involved in that. So you watch What the Health and Forks Over Knives and, you know,
There's lots
all
of
those documentaries. So from there, I started researching the doctors that were being interviewed, because I'm a why person. You know, I want to know how and why things work.
I can relate to that.
So I started looking into it, and it was like this light bulb went off in my head. And it was like, you know, at that point, I'm 54 years old. How did I not know this stuff? You know, to me, the salad on the plate was a garnish. You know, it wasn't, you couldn't get nutrients from it. So, you know, but everything else was the important stuff. From there, I was looked, and they talked about fibre. And I thought, wow, I wonder how much fibre I've been having. So me, you know, having documented everything, went back through my fitness pal for the last 8 months and actually logged my fibre. And I worked out I was getting 1 to 2 grams of fibre per day.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
So,
people watching, you should be aiming for at least 30 grams of fiber a day. I personally
yeah.
would probably get double that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
you weren't getting much.
No, no, that's it. And I thought, wow, I've got bowel cancer in my family, and oh look, breast cancer and bowel cancer and bowel diseases. And I thought, wow, I'm setting myself up for, my heart's not going to kill me now, but my diet,
Yeah.
could well, something else is going to get me. So yeah, I kind of segued into McDougall, and I read Proteinaholic, and
Great book.
I think, yeah, great book. I think I'm probably 10 or 15. I've lost count books in my research, hundreds of hours of podcasts and videos, and yeah, I stumbled across you through. Yeah, just through, McDougall into the Mary's Mini, and then someone said, there's this Australian guy, look him up.
Weirdo.
So, yeah. So I downloaded your book straight away, and and finally, for the first time, because you get this window when you have bariatric surgery, and they call it the honeymoon period. And if you don't get your weight off in that period of time, there's a huge chance that you'll never get it off without lifestyle change. And and so many put so much weight back on, and I was seeing that over and over and over again in the bariatric support groups.
People myself, sorry to interrupt, but I've coached quite a few people, like on an individual one-on-one coaching basis, that have done exactly that. They've had surgery, whether it's bypass surgery or sleeve, or there's a few different ways you can go. But yeah, I've coached a few people that have lost quite a bit of weight and then started putting it back on again. And yeah, that doesn't make it a bad thing to do. It just means that you've still got to be careful, like everyone else does. You get
That's right.
And then you've still got to be careful. Yeah.
Yeah, the mentality around it. So that I heard so much was, well, look, I can eat anything I want. I'm just going to eat it in smaller quantities.
Yeah.
But when you're an addict, and for me it was prescription medication and alcohol and food, a little bit as often as I want, just in small quantities doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm sort of, for me, I couldn't open a bottle of wine and have one glass. I had to finish the bottle. I can't open a box of chocolates and have one chocolate. I've got to finish the box.
Yeah, I can relate.
So, so there was no modification. It just didn't happen. And I decided, look, my health was so important at that point that I needed to do something that I was going to be able to sustain for the rest of my life. No more quick fixes, no more starvation. So to be free of the absolute torture of quantity restriction is life-changing, absolutely life-changing, especially for someone like me who, even after bypass surgery, is starving, hungry all the time.
Yeah.
And most days I can manage that. I know I'm hungry. I eat 4 or 5 times a day. But, this far out of surgery, I'm eating normal quantities of food. So the restriction, is no longer really there.
Yeah.
So if I was eating normal quantities of calorically dense food, then I wouldn't be maintaining my weight. So, so switching to, I quickly realised as well that, that vegan wasn't what I wanted to be, simply because vegans can eat Oreos and drink Coke.
Yeah.
I
always say that, vegan ice cream is probably healthier than non-vegan ice cream, but the lesser of two evils is still evil,
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
So let's just avoid all the evils altogether and just whole food, plant-based is the way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And And I mean, I'm now, gosh, I've lost 47 kilos. So I think it's about 103 pounds. I've gone from nearly 100, just under 100 kilos down to about 52, 53 kilos.
It's amazing. Nearly half your body weight.
Sorry?
Nearly half your body weight.
Yeah. My BMI is halved. It sits around 20 now.
Wow.
But the really amazing thing has been that about 6 weeks after I went plant-based, my blood pressure, medication had helped, but about 6 weeks afterwards, my blood pressure was half what it had been.
Wow.
So I was up around the 180 mark, sometimes up to 190, over 100. My heart rate was well over 100 all the time. My blood pressure now sits around 90 over 50 most of the time. My heart rate's about 50.
That's amazing. How do you feel with your, I just want to stop there for a second, because I do hear from people all the time that have their blood pressure reduce, and people worry when it starts getting down towards 100 over 70 or 100 over 60 or something like that. And I'm always reassuring people that no, it's okay. You know, if you're not on medication, then you don't need to worry about how low your blood pressure gets. And I've regularly told people that I know of plenty of people that are down at like 90 over 50, like what you've said. Those are the numbers that I give people all the time, and people stay skeptical about that number being an okay number. So how do you feel? Is it like you're living at 90 over 50s, and how is it for you?
It's, wow, it's the feeling of well-being, you know, to not have the pressure in my head, to not have my heart constantly racing, yet to have the ability to exercise more and to be more energetic, you know, without that constant fear of, you know, I'm going to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, so the general well-being is just amazing. Yeah. I do, sometimes I stand up a bit quick and I might get a little bit dizzy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, just you know, 10 seconds and it passes.
I think everyone pretty much gets that from time to time.
Of course.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe. Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you said that, because like I said, lots of people worry when their blood pressure starts getting down, and it's not like, you know, the typical accepted healthy blood pressure is 120 over 80, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you've really got your diet dialed in and you're doing it right, eating whole plant foods, unmodified foods, no oils, all of that, then 120 over 80 is probably the upper limit of where you would be if you were doing
absolutely
for an extended period. Most people would be like, I'm not as low as you. I'm more around 100 over 60. That's where I sit, although I haven't checked my blood pressure for a long time, so maybe it's lower now, but last time I checked it was 100 over 60, and it feels really good.
Yeah, I monitor at home. So if my blood pressure hit 120 over 80, I'd go to the doctors.
Yeah.
I'd want to know why my blood pressure had gone up so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so you know, said I basically came off all medication. I was on 9 medication, more than 20 tablets a day. So I was on 5 heart medications, 2 antidepressants, 1 for my bowel, 1 for my bladder incontinence and bowel incontinence, and I was able to come off all medication. Amazing. So my ejection fraction in my heart, the highest it got to last year was up to 75%, which is like, top end of normal. That is really good. I did have a little bit of a setback towards the end of the year, and it dropped back down again, but that was due to a major stressor in my life. But it's creeping back up again now. I'm back up into the 50s, so which is the bottom end of normal. So you know, it's brilliant.
Great. Fantastic.
So I don't need a heart transplant anymore. So, so yeah, you know, so the weight, once I discovered your plan, that was when the weight really started to fall off. I attribute the last probably 25 kilos to following SpudFit principles.
Awesome.
You know, I didn't go all in and do, you know, 100%, but I was probably 80 to 90% Spuds. But that mental freedom of being able to, you know, I'd get up in the morning and I'd cook my bowl of Spuds and they'd just sit on the bench and I'd just eat them like apples all day. And, you know, when I did make, because I was mainly on my own, my kids, I mean, my youngest has just turned 18, so predominantly on my own, and they weren't vegan, so, you know, plant-based, so they did their own cooking. But, you know, I used to meal prep, and, you know, if I cooked like a lentil casserole or something, I'd freeze it into portions. And then I'd, you know, have a bowl of Spuds and put a spoonful of that on top of it. So I was having other stuff as well, but predominantly I was eating, you know, a lot of potatoes.
Yeah, that's great. That sounds a lot along the lines of what of how I eat now. It's like I eat a lot of potatoes. I eat potatoes with pretty much every meal, but I'll also throw in, like, I'll have some tomatoes or some broccoli or some. I'm eating a lot of Brussels sprouts at the moment, and you know, sometimes we'll you know, exactly like you said, we made a lentil dal a couple of days ago, and yeah, this morning for breakfast I had some leftover lentil dal on my potatoes, and there'll be all sorts of different meals we make, and yeah, it's during the most often at dinner is the one that I'll have a little bit different because I end up eating with my family, I end up eating something that Mandy made or whatever, but yeah, sometimes I'll just eat potatoes at dinner as well, or, you know, eat potatoes and greens or whatever. And yeah, it's a really good, really simple way to be. So yeah.
That's it. Yeah, it's definitely the basis of what I eat now. You know, I mean, I'm not perfect 100% of the time, but I figure, you know, I eat 4 times a day usually.
Yeah.
So I eat 28 times a week. If I have 1 or 2 meals where, you know, something that I, you know, if I'm eating out or something and I consider it to be not necessarily my type of food, or, you know, it's a bit of a treat of some sort, I figure, you know what, I might not have an A+ that day or that meal, but over the week I'm still an A.
Yeah.
And
that's really important, I think, for people to understand as well, that, you know, ideally you would want to get an A+ for every meal. Of course you would. You'd want to get an A+ for every meal. And for some people, that's the only way it can be. If you, you know, if you have that odd meal out, that's, for some people, that's going to snowball and turn into, you know, a major problem. But it's, you know, we've got to recognize our own limitations and understand ourselves. And if you've come to a spot where you can make it work having that 1 or 2 odd meals out in a week that are less than perfect, then I think that's great. And it's a really positive way to be, where you recognize that, okay, A+ is obviously what you're going for, but, you know, getting a B every now and then is not the end of the world, you know. That's okay.
Exactly.
And you can get a B, and then you can get right back into getting A+ again. And if you can do that and that works for you, then I think that's a really good way to be. So, well done.
That's it. And you know, I mean, I have limits. I mean, meat is absolutely you know, is just not even a consideration.
Yeah.
Dairy is generally just not even a consideration. So, you know, when I'm talking about having things that are, you know, it's more like a bit of vegan junk food, you know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, for me, it'd be like on a rare occasion, I'll be out and you know, I'll get, let's say, a vegetable stir fry or something, and it's got a little bit of oil in it. I'll just ask the chef, could I have it with no oil? And they'll say, no, we don't do it with no oil. And I'll say, okay, just the smallest amount possible, please. And they'll say, no problem. And then I'll just, you know, that's what my level of making an exception is. And maybe it's a little bit different for you, you know, I'm comfortable with that. And then once I do that, then I can go back to no oil, and that's fine. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. It's
I
good.
probably shouldn't have said I probably shouldn't have said vegan junk food. That probably wasn't, but it's probably eating more vegan rather than plant-based.
Yeah,
So because
okay.
it include oil and things. But previously, you know, if I'd gone off, if I'd had one uncompliant meal or one bad meal, it could trigger me, you know, a week or 2 weeks
Yeah,
or totally end of the diet.
yeah,
Whereas now it's like, you know what, it's I'm doing what I need to do just at this moment because I need something to eat.
yeah,
But generally I always carry food with me. So, and I use your idea. I always eat before I go. So that if I can't get something, because we live in a small town, so it's very hard to often get as what I would consider to be my type of food.
yeah,
But you know, I make it work. So I order something from the entree menu, and it's, you know, simple and basic, you know. But having said that, when I first went plant-based, I was 100%, you know, there was no erring from it. And it was about 6 months in, so it was probably in the middle of last year, and I had a bit of a slice that my daughter made. And I'd heard about being a food addict, but never really thought it was me. That, yeah, I knew that, you know, medications, over-the-counter medications, prescription medications, and alcohol I was susceptible to, but never really thought myself a food addict, just that I liked food. And she made this slice, and it wasn't particularly bad, but of course it had sugar in it, and I hadn't had sugar for 6 months. Whoa, did it make me sick?
yeah, yeah,
Just, the sugar rush. And I thought, wow, I know, you know, we always laugh about kids getting a sugar rush, you know,
yeah.
feed them lollies and send them home to mum. But yeah, and it triggered cravings for days. And then I realized that, you know, that little inner junkie that I have, she'd got a hit and she liked it. And I really fight it. I actually threw out what she cooked, because I couldn't have it sitting on the bench because it was all I ate for an entire day. And I thought, no, this is, you know, there's really something to this. And then I started researching sugar, you know, food addiction.
Yeah.
And took on, you know, was my next bit of research that I did, and self-discovery, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So your relationship with food is seems like it's a fairly different thing now. So how's that for you? How's the changes been, and how did that come about?
I will always be a food addict. I will always be an obese person. But now I live in a normal sized body.
Yeah.
So I'm very aware of that. So my relationship with food now is, you know, oh gosh, I guess it's good. It's good. I mean, compared to what it was, it is good. It is extremely good. But I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I can't get complacent. I did a bit in December, which is why I did the Spud Fit Challenge in January. Not that I needed to lose weight, because I'm, you know, sitting at the bottom end of normal in my BMI now. But I'd let over Christmas and just different, you know, family things, and I just let it, you know, sugar back in, I guess, and fat. I'd let sugar and fat back in. And so I just needed to say, you know, I hadn't put on any weight, so I knew that I was managing it, but I was starting to reduce the good stuff so that I could eat some of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And I needed to take a step back and say, hang on a sec, no, I need to increase the good stuff so that I'm eating less of the bad stuff. So January gave me that opportunity, and which is why I went in Spuds in January. And I didn't complete the entire month. I think I did 21 days. But I'd lost 2 kilos by that point, and and felt that I'd reset myself, and then I started introducing some other foods. So for me, the reset was very different. It wasn't about weight loss; it was about mental reset.
Yeah, well, that's great. No,
So,
well done, and it's really, I think it's a big thing that you were able to recognise those changed behaviour patterns really early on, and then take action straight away to do something about it. Because lots of people, would have waited until they'd gained 30 kilos before they start thinking about doing something about it. So, yeah, that's you should be proud of that. And
thank you. Yeah,
no, that's good.
That's the key, I think, to it. The weight loss, I mean, losing 103 pounds, that's brilliant, and I'm very proud of it. But for me, I've lost that weight so many times over my entire life that what I'm really, my measure of success is maintaining my weight. And I'm doing that. I've maintained at or below my goal weight for the last 8 months. So to me, that's my level of success. And
definitely.
To be able to now, to realize, to have the toolkit, I guess, have the mental toolkit to, to be a bit kind to myself on bad days, to have the strategies that I've implemented, so that I can make good, healthy choices. My home is a clean zone. So, I don't even own, I have a wooden salad bowl, which I have to take to my daughters to season with oil, because I literally don't have oil in my house. Yeah. I don't even have a can of spray oil in my house. If something calls for a spoonful of corn flour, I don't use it.
Yeah.
I thicken with a potato. So my home is a clean zone, but, it's decision fatigue is a major thing. So if I can fill my house with easy things, which is where my food prep is so important, so that if I'm really tired,
you got to make the healthy choice the easy choice. You got to do whatever it takes to make healthy choice the easy choice, and that doesn't have to be a lot. For me, making a healthy choice the easy choice means I've always got fruit available, usually banana. At the moment, it's bananas, grapes, and mangoes. They're always available. And then the other thing is I've always got potatoes cooked and ready. And usually I've got some rice and beans as well, cooked and ready. And I can have a couple of bananas or a mango or whatever at a moment's notice, or I can use the other stuff I've got to have a proper full hearty meal ready and on the table in 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't take a lot of effort to just have potatoes ready. You don't have to do a massive amount of meal prep and have heaps of different containers lined up with all these amazing meals in them. You just have your staples ready to go, and it's easy.
I'm exactly the same. My go-to is I always have a bowl of potatoes done, but I always have bananas and berries in the house. I eat oatmeal, porridge, usually once a day. So that's my dessert, and I cover it full of berries, and put some hemp seeds on it, and usually I have it in the evening. That's my dessert. So I've always got porridge, always got bananas and berries, always have potatoes, and I do make little bliss balls. I do have some little bliss balls in the freezer. So if I'm having a cup of tea and I want something I can, and they're all natural. They have some nuts in them. It's the only time I ever have nuts. I'm happy to have one. But it's so much cheaper. It saves me a fortune.
Definitely. That's a bonus that we always forget to talk about, is how much money you save. Not just money on medications and doctor's visits and all of that, but just the literal money on your food bill is it's so incredibly cheap. And it's funny. I often get people writing to me saying they want to do the Spud Fit Challenge, but they can't afford it. And of course, I don't want to pressure people or whatever. So fair enough. If you can't afford it, that's fine. And it's all good. I'll do what I can to help people. But yeah, it's people don't realize that, you know,
Mm.
for me, if we're talking about my own personal food bill, I save every single day. I save more money on food than I would spend on doing the Spud Fit Challenge in a month. So yeah,
Yeah,
pretty easy.
yeah. I think it costs me more to feed my cats than it does actually feed myself most of the time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
I reckon I probably eat on average for less than $5 a day. Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
simple. Yeah,
Yeah, I would spend probably $20 a week, less
yeah,
than that probably.
yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
you know, and when it's just Spuds, I mean, obviously it's way less than that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I most times now I do like a click and collect at Coles,
Oh yeah,
you know, yeah, so I don't have to deal with supermarkets
yeah,
because spontaneous buying is just not for me.
yeah.
And I was having, particularly when I was predominantly potatoes, more so than I am now, I would have, you know, shopping bills that didn't actually qualify for click and collect because I hadn't spent enough. So I'd be fluffing it out with, you know, extra cat food and, you know,
Yeah,
and things to,
yeah,
so that I could actually go and do a click and collect and not
yeah.
deal with a supermarket.
Oh, good
But,
one.
you know, yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, I
I,
just
I
wanted to say that
yeah, I was
for
going to
you and,
say, have you got one last thing to add before we wrap it up? One bit of advice or one little something you want to share?
oh, look, I guess the main thing is that, oh, there's so many things. I guess, I guess when people, you know, you talk about, you know, when I studied some nutrition and, you know, and you hear so much, it's like a well-planned vegan diet can be healthy. And for me, initially looking at it, it's like, that's too hard. I
Yeah,
can't, you know, I can't, you know, most days at that point, I couldn't get out of bed. You know, so how on earth could I plan, you know, and meal prep a well-planned vegan diet? So to come across something like Spud Fit, which is so simple and so basic that, you know, when you're dealing with mental health issues and depression issues and, you know, life issues, that you can do so simply and so safely, and feel so amazing on it, you know, is really like this light bulb, and it's so freeing. And so I think, you know, like I said before about raising kids and, you know, dealing with depression, don't sweat the small stuff.
yeah,
You know, it's, you know, spuds are, you know, do the whole thing.
yeah. They'll get
Um,
it done.
yeah. And the other thing is, you know, I just wanted to thank you and Mandy, for putting together a program that is so accessible. You know, you know, I'm 55. I've been on a disability pension. You know, not working at the moment. Money is super, super tight, but you have a program, that I can afford to do. So you've so often, you know, you join Weight Watchers and it costs you a fortune, you know, and I've done that so many times, it's not funny. You know, you're buying OptiFast, it's, you know, $50 a box. You know, so many diets, they want to sell you something, you know, it costs you money to do in addition to the subscriptions and all the rest of it. And it's really inhibitive for people, for some people, you know, life circumstances can toss you some really shitty curveballs. But you guys have created something which is so accessible for absolutely everybody. And it's so simple, and it gives you, the basis to build and to grow and the support network. So, you know, I'm actually tearing up.
Me too. Yeah.
I really appreciate what you guys do. So, you know, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. That makes me feel good. I'll be walking on air for the rest of the day. That's that's what I
And
need.
I'm so honoured that you asked me to come on.
Oh,
So I think,
yeah, I'm honoured that you accepted. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out, and I'm sure a lot of people watching will be getting a lot of help from, yeah, hearing about your pretty incredible journey to be where you are now, and yeah, and a lot of little pearls of wisdom in there to go with it. So thank you very much, and yeah, good on you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
All right. Spud up. There it is. Amazing story, right? Isn't Lynn cool? I'm a big fan. And if you are too, and if you want to get some of that action for yourself, then please click below, spudfit.com, and get involved. Join the Spud Club and spud up.